Who is Jack Smith? The special prosecutor who could take down Trump. The U.S. Department of Justice veteran oversaw anti-corruption prosecutions against multiple U.S. politicians in his role as the head of the Department of Justice Public Integrity Section from 2010 to 2015. Time equals 400 Ms. Greater than one of those cases was against former Virginia Governor Robert McDonnell, a Republican against whom he secured a conviction on bribery charges, though the case was later thrown out by the U.S. Supreme Court. He also won a conviction of former GOP Representative Rick Renzi of Arizona, who received a sentence of 3 years in prison before being pardoned by Mr. Trump. A Harvard Law School graduate, Mr. Smith also served in prosecutorial roles in U.S. attorney offices in the Middle District of Tennessee and the Eastern District of New York, prior to his appointment by Attorney General Merrick Garland. Mr. Smith lived in the Dutch city of The Hague, where he had been serving as a specialist prosecutor, overseeing investigations into war crimes in Kosovo since 2018. He also served as a coordinator of investigations for the prosecutor's office at the International Criminal Court from 2008 to 2010, where he worked on cases against foreign government officials and members of militias accused of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Mr. Smith returned to the U.S. last November after being appointed as a special counsel by Mr. Garland. His first mission was to consider whether any person or entity violated the law in connection with efforts to interfere with the lawful transfer of power following the 2020 presidential election or the certification of the Electoral College vote held on or about January 6, 2021. The second, which led to Mr. Trump being indicted and arraigned in 37 federal charges, was about whether the former president had violated U.S. laws prohibiting unlawful retention of national defense information and obstruction of justice. It marked the first time in U.S. history that an ex-president, let alone one who is a declared candidate in the next presidential election, faced criminal charges. On the 13th of June, Mr. Trump was arrested and arraigned on those charges in a federal court in Miami, where he pleaded not guilty. His longtime aide Walt Nauta was also charged in the case. Coming face to face in the courtroom, several reporters described how Mr. Smith was seen staring down the former president throughout the entirety of the arraignment proceedings. On the 27th of July, Mr. Smith hit Mr. Trump with fresh charges in the case over accusations that he tried to delete Mar-a-Lago security footage so it couldn't be handed over to investigators probing his handling of secret documents. According to prosecutors, Mr. Nauta and a new third defendant, Mar-a-Lago property manager Carlos de Oliveira, collaborated to hide the footage. Mr. Nauta and Mr. de Oliveira were also charged over the matter. Mr. Trump was also hit with a new charge, his 32nd for retaining national defense information, in relation to a new classified document described as a top-secret presentation concerning military activity in a foreign country. This document is believed to be a plan of attack on Iran, which leaked audio previously revealed Mr. Trump discussing in a meeting with biographers and staffers at his Bedminster, New Jersey golf club. Mr. Trump is expected to go to trial on the 20th of May 2024 in Florida. Time equals 400 Ms. Greater than but beyond the classified documents case. Mr. Smith also investigated Mr. Trump's efforts to remain in office despite losing the 2020 election, including any role he may have had in inciting the insurrection on 6 January 2021 for which he was impeached but not convicted in the U.S. Senate trial. On 18 July, the former president said he had received a letter stating that he was a target of a federal grand jury probe. Then on 1 August, a third indictment was brought against the ex-president. A grand jury in Washington, D.C. voted to charge Mr. Trump on 4 counts of conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, conspiracy against rights and obstruction of, an attempt to obstruct, an official proceeding. On 3 August, Mr. Trump surrendered to authorities in Washington, D.C. to be arrested before appearing for his arraignment. Later in the month, the federal judge overseeing the case set a trial date for 4 March 2024. In the courtroom, Mr. Trump and his nemesis Mr. Smith came face to face once again, staring each other down as the former president pleaded not guilty to all charges. As he pursues charges against one of the most famous men in the world, Mr. Smith has been thrust into the spotlight. so will his prior experience be ample preparation for the punishing national attention to which he will now be subjected, including Mr. Trump's infamous social media broadsides. Following his first federal indictment in June, Mr. Trump lashed out at Mr. Smith, accusing him of being a Trump hater and a deranged psycho that shouldn't be involved in any case having to do with justice, other than to look at Biden as a criminal, which he is. Subsequently, Mr. Trump's allies and supporters began attacking Mr. Smith, including Kimberly Guilfoyle, Matt Gaetz, and Mark Levin. Time equals 400 Ms. greater than Special Counsel Jack Smith is atrocious, the MAGA War Room tweeted on the 13th of June, the day of Mr. Trump's arrest and arraignment. Far-right U.S. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced an appropriations rider to the House floor on the 12th of June to defund Jack Smith's special counsel, his office and the investigation. This is a weaponized government attempt to take down the top political enemy and leading presidential candidate, she said. Mr. Smith has also faced repeated attacks from Mr. Trump himself ever since that first federal indictment was handed down. Time equals 400 Ms. greater than in his post-arraignment speech at Bedminster on the 13th of June, the former president laid into the special prosecutor. He looks like a thug, he said of Mr. Smith. He's a raging and uncontrolled Trump hater, as is his wife, who also happened to be the producer of that Michelle Obama puff piece. Mr. Smith's wife, Katie Chevenix, is a documentary filmmaker who produced 2020's Becoming. Mr. Smith has been unfaltering in his response. On the 9th of June, when the indictment was unsealed, he struck a defiant note, a note he appeared to continue to take in his courtroom stance. Adherence to the rule of law is a bedrock principle of the Department of Justice, and our nation's commitment to the rule of law sets an example for the world, he told reporters. We have one set of laws in this country and they apply to everyone. After Mr. Trump was federally indicted for a second time, Mr. Trump's campaign released a statement calling the indictment disgraceful and political targeting. The lawlessness of these persecutions of President Trump and his supporters is reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the 1930s, the former Soviet Union, and other authoritarian, dictatorial regimes. President Trump has always followed the law and the Constitution with advice from many highly accomplished attorneys, the statement from Mr. Trump's campaign read. Following Mr. Trump's outbursts in his New York fraud trial that resulted in a gag order against him, Mr. Smith requested protections for jurors and prospective jurors ahead of the former president's trial in his election subversion case. In early October, the judge presiding over a lawsuit from New York Attorney General Letitia James against Mr. Trump's business empire warned he could face serious sanctions if he continues to speak out against members of the court after he falsely attacked Judge Arthur Engoron's chief clerk on his Truth Social account. In his filing to U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan on the 10th of October, Mr. Smith said that among the good reasons for the court to impose certain restrictions on juror information, chief among them is the defendant's continued use of social media as a weapon of intimidation in court proceedings. The filing notes that, just last week the defendant escalated his conduct and publicly attacked Judge Engoron's clerk in New York Supreme Court. Given that the defendant, after apparently reviewing opposition research on court staff, chose to use social media to publicly attack a court staffer, there is cause for concern about what he may do with social media research on potential jurors in this case, Mr. Smith warned. In October, Mr. Smith also criticized Mr. Trump for trying to postpone his classified documents trial until after the 2024 election. Time equals 400 Ms. greater than Mr. Smith pointed out that not only is Mr. Trump asking the court to continue the trial for an additional 7 months, but that a delay had already been rejected by the court. Less than 3 months ago, the classified documents trial is set to begin in May 2024. Time equals 400 Ms. greater than. The defendants provide no credible justification to postpone a trial that is still 7 months away, Mr. Smith wrote. They are fully informed about the charges and the theory of the government's case from a highly detailed superseding indictment and comprehensive, organized and classified discovery.